I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I am Ben Leo, along with Darren Grimes, Albie Amankona, Benjamin Butterworth and Diane Spencer. Tonight on the show, today's disgraceful pro-Palestine march in London is going to fuel terrorism on our streets.
Suella called the pro-Palestine marchers hate marchers the other week, but she actually should have called them thick marchers.
Well, psychic Suella, Rishi needs to back her because I tell you what, she's been proven right today.
The King's speech shows this government has no ideas and nowhere to go.
And I don't like 20 miles per hour speed limits, not because I've just been busted.
It's 7 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. They've taken to the streets, they've waved their placards, they've manned the barricades, but sorry guys, we're still here. Some of us anyway. Welcome to the Saturday 5. I'm joined by Darren, Albie and the wokest man in Britain, Benjamin Butterworth. And I'm delighted to say we're also joined by top comedian and all-round legend, Diane Spencer. Welcome, Diane. So you know the drill. We all get 60 seconds to outline our argument about a chosen topic. Then we pile in and it all kicks off big time. And of course, we want to know your views as well, so get in touch by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com. And don't forget Flummox the 5, where you can ask us anything you like about any topic. Nothing is off limits. Benjamin's dress sense normally dominates the conversation, but other topics are also welcome. Before we start tearing each other apart, it's your Saturday night news with Aaron.
A very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Prime Minister has condemned what he's described as violent scenes from far-right groups, but also from Hamas sympathisers after an eventful day of demonstrations in London. Hundreds of thousands of people took part in a pro-Palestinian rally in the capital, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. One of the biggest political demonstrations in British history coincided with Armistice Day. Marchers gathered in Hyde Park and then made their way to the US Embassy in Nine Elms, just south of the river. Almost 2,000 officers have been deployed across London this weekend to prevent violent behaviour. Rishi Sunak says all criminality must be met with the full and swift force of the law. And while the pro-Palestinian march appears to have passed peacefully, 92 counter-protesters have been arrested amid ongoing clashes with police. Scuffles took place earlier in Westminster, with the Met saying the majority of arrests were to prevent a breach of the peace. It comes as the Home Secretary has been accused of stoking tensions and emboldening the far right. Our Home and Security Editor Mark White says the police are trying to disperse the crowds.
Well, police have now moved in. They're trying to clear this main road going over Westminster Bridge. We've had protesters from both sides, pro-Palestinian protesters and also these counter-protesters here. They have been clashing sporadically as two groups have come together, but it's been pretty well contained by the Metropolitan Police and these other forces who are here today on mutual aid. But it remains fairly tense, a bit volatile when people from time to time are coming together as they head for the tube station to head home. Lots of police here in Parliament Square to be able to deal with any eventuality in the hours ahead.
Well, the events didn't mar today's 2-minute silence, which police say was respectfully observed. The UK paused on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month to mark Armistice Day, the end of World War I, and to honour those who've served in conflicts. World War II veteran John Dennett said the servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice must always be remembered.
We must never forget what happened years ago through all the wars that enabled us to be where we are. Like, we're lucky. And the kids, I always say to the kids, without remembrance, and remember it, because if you don't, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those lads who gave their life, and it runs into thousands.
Well, this is GB News live across the UK. I'll be back with more in just under an hour's time. Now it's time for the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Ben Leo and we're in for a lively show tonight, I can promise you that. No time to waste. Let's crack on with the first of tonight's discussions.
Indeed. So it's one subject that's been dominating the agenda this weekend, the pro-Palestine protests which took place in London today. Now, our very own Ben Leo was on the scene. Let's hear what he made of them.
OK, let's kick off things with how I mean to go on. Today's Palestine march in London was a disgrace. The police who allowed it to go ahead are an embarrassment, and the government that's led this country for the last 13 years is a sham for allowing Britain's values to be eroded away under their watch. And you want to tar all those who oppose these marches as far right, as extremists. You must be off your head. It's been reported half of today's march organisers have links to Hamas, including one bloke who now lives in a cushy North London flat, or house rather, who the US accused of running Hamas operations in the West Bank. Plot terror, get a council house. Nice one. And how do these people repay us? They lock London down with "from the river to the sea" chants, calling for the destruction of Israel, while excusing Hamas atrocities of October the 7th. They tear down posters of kidnapped children, completely thick and ignorant to the fact their hate-filled tribalism is the very thing they condemn Israel of doing. These clowns carry signs with swastikas on, yet anyone who doesn't agree with their worldview is a Nazi. Let me tell you, today's march should never have gone ahead. Aside from exposing Hamas as useful idiots, it's given the green light to extremism in Britain. They've emboldened terrorism. I watched people dying in the London Bridge terror attack of 2017. I saw a young woman with her throat cut, men twisted torsos after being hit by a van. I'll never forget that night or the images ingrained in my brain. And 6 years on, that kind of extremism is still alive and well in Britain. And we must never let it happen again. Darren, do you agree?
I do, actually, and I'm very sorry that you went through that. I can't imagine anything more harrowing than those scenes. But it really does highlight what Israel's just been through and how actually this isn't just an Israeli problem.
Yeah.
Right, this is a problem in Britain. This is going on here at home, where we've got people on the streets who genuinely, in my view, are glorifying a terrorist organisation that is prescribed in this country, and actually seeking to vindicate the people that were responsible for the massacre on October 7th. I mean, it is no clearer to me than the fact that the day after the massacre is when people started coming out on the streets, right?
Yeah, before they'd even seen Israel's response.
Exactly. So what more do you need to know? My mind was made up on these people from October 8th, frankly.
Yeah. Albie, how did we get here?
Well, we got here because there was an awful terrorist attack in Israel that was prosecuted by Hamas. And then we've got two groups of people, Muslims and Jews, who are the groups of people in question in Israel and Palestine who have got a conflict. And we now have that conflict playing out on the streets of London. But about the protests in particular, because we all know that I am sympathetic to a ceasefire, and I don't think it was wrong that the protests went ahead today. Look, I think they were disrespectful. I wish they weren't happening, but I stand by the British value of free speech. And Ben, I find it difficult that you say there's been 13 years of government, Tory government, and they've let our British values erode, and then say you want to ban a peaceful protest. I would say that is an erosion of British values, and I can't believe you're saying...
Hang on. If this process was a one-off, I'd say yes. I'm a libertarian at heart. Protest all you want, but they've had 4 weeks of examples of how these people behave.
But you want to ban a protest. How does that work?
What they're doing is illegal. You can't chant anti-Semitic chants from the river to the sea, calling for the eradication of Israel, celebrating the death and the murder of civilians. You can't do that. Benjamin, should these protests have been banned today, bearing in mind the last 4 weeks, what we've seen on the streets?
Well, as I've said on recent weeks, you know, I'm very much see this from Israel's perspective, and I don't share the view that those 300,000 people do. But I actually think there was something quite ridiculous about saying it was wrong for them to have this protest in a different part of London at a different time of day, not at 11 a.m, on a Saturday, where they've been doing it every Saturday. So the fact that Armistice Day fell today was pure coincidence. And I think it is a British value to be able to have that protest. Now, the problem, and it's a big problem, is that this isn't a normal peaceful protest, because there is a considerable number of people on this protest who are clearly racist, who are clearly hateful, who are saying things that are unacceptable. And I think the difficulty here is that they have every right to do this protest, whether it's Armistice Day or not, as far as I'm concerned. The problem is the police don't seem to be able to manage the sheer numbers who are also just racist.
Well, I just think, bearing in mind the disgusting scenes we've seen over the past 4 weeks, that they should have, and bearing in mind, of course, it's Armistice Day, should have maybe reconsidered. Diane, thoughts?
I think that it's a very interesting time, because you say that there are racists, but there are also people in the other group who are extremists as well, and they mustn't be discounted.
I think they're both racist.
Yeah, they are both racist. And there's a lot of misogyny, which obviously affects somebody like me. For example, after the protest last weekend, I was in a service station, and there was a large group of the pro-Palestinian protesters choosing to pray in the reception area. Now, those particular services have a prayer room. It's Toddington North, and they have a designated prayer room. But these people chose to pray blocking a public space, and it was very confrontational because they were not friendly and they were eyeballing everybody.
Did you feel frightened?
It did. It made me very unsettled because I got glared at. And do you know what? Like, what angers me the most is that I have friends who love Islam and love their religion, and they make jokes about it.
Let me just play you a quick clip of my chat with some of the guys on the march today. Take a look at this.
Do you know that 3 out of 6 organisers of today's march have links to Hamas?
Well, that's a matter of opinion. No, I don't share that opinion.
Well, it's fact, actually.
I've got absolutely no problem being here today.
Why are you all masked up, by the way? Why are you covering your faces?
I've got a scarf on.
Israel are just terrorists. Should Israel exist as a state?
Nah, no comment.
What do you think about the October 7th attacks?
October 7th. I was actually born on the 19th of October, and my mum was born on the 20th.
Answer that question.
All right. Most of the people that died was military personnel and stuff like that.
Darren, how are we meant to deal with people like that last guy at the end who can't even tell the truth that it was 1,400 civilians who were slaughtered on October the 7th?
Well, yeah, it is really rather extraordinary, isn't it, and really quite depressing. I mean, I am utterly despondent at what we've seen on our streets today, and I would argue that actually the frustration that we've seen play out is just a microcosm of what we're going to see ultimately. I'm really worried about the trajectory that we're actually on right now, and I worry for, frankly, the social fabric of this country, where you've got people saying, I don't recognise what's going on in Britain, and I don't share the values of these people who want to eradicate people just because they're Jewish, right? First it's the Jews, who's it going to be next? Is it the gays next? And the left have got to sort themselves out on this. They're all to shop on this point. I mean, I think Benjamin Butterworth is the only one with any clarity on this issue right now, and that's not something I've ever said before. So I'm deeply concerned, and I think that just shows, Ben, you've highlighted the idiocy of these people and, frankly, the sheer malice. They don't care.
I mean, it's not like me to defend Keir Starmer, but I would say the line that Keir Starmer's taken on this has been quite good too.
OK, well, yeah, I've had my say about the dangers posed by these marchers, but do these protesters even know what they're actually protesting about? Albie has some thoughts on this. Albie, take it away.
A few weeks ago, Suella Braverman called these pro-Palestine marchers hate marchers. Now, that was completely inappropriate in my view, completely below the belt. She should have called them thick marches, because it is very clear to me that the young people out on these protests have got absolutely no idea what they are talking about. Take a look at this clip from the campaign against anti-Semitism.
Hamas invaded Israel on the 7th of October. What was your initial reaction to that?
I don't believe they did today, Hamas. I think so. Honestly, I think I need to be a bit more clued up on everything that's going on. So I feel like I'm not really qualified to answer that too well. I mean, I'm not sure if I've seen anything that.
Imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine going to a protest you knew absolutely nothing about, and then agreeing to be interviewed about a protest you know absolutely nothing about. I just can't imagine doing anything that stupid. And you see, the thing is, I'm sympathetic to a ceasefire. I can understand why these ladies are out there protesting. I think what is going on in Gaza is absolutely appalling, irrespective of the fact that I believe Israel has a right to defend themselves. What I don't understand is how women like that walk among us and are from my generation. What an absolute disgrace. But you know what? It doesn't stop there. Take a look at this woman who is angry at the government's climate change response.
I'm here because I don't have a future. And you might hate me for doing this, and you're entitled to hate me. But I wish you would direct all that anger and hatred at our government. They are betraying young people like me. I would love to be there if they did their lawful duty.
Oh, my goodness gracious me. So this woman is angry at the UK government's green climate policy, despite the fact, according to international climate bodies, the United Kingdom is the second greenest country in the world. Yes, you heard it, the second greenest country in the world. Imagine being so upset about being part of a country and voting in a government whose climate policy was the second greenest in the world. An absolute disgrace. So my question this evening to everyone at home, everyone on the panel is, how did we get here? What do we do about these people? And where do we go from here? Benjamin Butterworth, I'm going to come straight to you. Where do we go from here?
I mean, look, you know, since YouTube came about, you get lots of things where people find an idiot at a protest and try and make a whole group look silly. Ben Leo does it on this channel frequently. You know, I don't think that you should... I mean, look, I don't share their views, by the way, but I don't think necessarily that means that we're a stupid generation. I do think that in the age of social media and identity politics, there is something to be said for people feeling like they want to be a part of a group as though it's in vogue to go to one of these Palestinian marches.
Life's too easy, isn't it, for these people? They've had no struggle. They've had no struggle or heartbreak or strife like the guys we've been remembering today on Armistice Day.
What would you say to people who would actually dispute the point that you just made and said, actually, our generation of the generation that lived through the financial crisis, then through COVID, then through the inflation crisis?
Suck it up, buttercup. Everything's easy. You've got it easy. You've got the internet. You've got unlimited resources. You've got more knowledge than any other generation of previous past.
The information generation, Diane, but we're still as thick as chips.
Well, do you know what? What alarmed me about those women was I think it was a touch of social contagion, a touch of, oh, yes, everybody's doing this, so we'll go do it. And it is worrying that there are people who will wave a placard around and not realise that by adding to the numbers, they're making something look more impressive than it is. And as we all know, politicians are very skittish, and when they see a lot of people protesting, they start to change their ideas, which is problematic, because you want people to stand for something. Gosh, the major problem, again, sadly, you only seem to have women in those clips, and that is a big problem.
There were stupid men in Ben Leo's clips.
Which is great, which is good balance. But what concerns me is when I do see women sort of protesting in favour of Hamas, and I think, do you not understand what strict Islamic rule...
Well, it's like the Queers for Palestine mob.
Yes.
Parading down the street with Queers love Palestine. Blah, blah. Guys, go to Palestine, they'll probably throw you off a building.
Yeah, it's completely at odds with the thing that they're protesting for, and there seems to be absolutely no sympathy whatsoever
I just
for the
want to get
people kidnapped.
Darren in on this, because you were quite involved in the Brexit movement. There were obviously getting big gatherings of people together was quite important at getting that vote off the ground. Did you ever utilise stupid people in order to get Brexit through?
Absolutely not. I would take great offence and exception to that word being used in that context. I think ultimately this is a form of luxury goods signalling, where no longer is it, Gucci or Louis Vuitton that people wear. It's been an absolute moron and supporting a terrorist organisation just to look good on Instagram. I think that is ultimately where we're at, and what social media has actually done to people. I think social media has had many benefits, but ultimately we are in the scenario in which people think it's actually good and sensible as a woman or as a queer person to come out, and I hate that use of that word, by the way. I use that because it's their language, not mine. I used to get called that. It's very odd that that's suddenly become a badge of honour. But I think that explains all of this. It's a form of virtue signalling. And I think ultimately Ben Leo is correct in saying that this is because there are no real struggles today, right? People have had it so good for so long, but I'm afraid that's all going to change.
What about an entrance exam? If you want to go on a protest, you've got to fill in an entrance form, and you get a little sticky label to prove that you know what you're protesting about.
Well, we've done exams on this show, and I didn't do very well, so that would mean I wouldn't get on protest.
OK, good stuff. Right, still to come tonight, everyone's favourite Home Secretary, mine at least anyway, Suella Braverman. Has she gone so far that even Darren wants her sacked? The Borefest, that was the King's speech. Have the Tories done enough to earn even Benjamin's support? I think I know the answer to that one. But coming up next, Diane Spencer on why she might very occasionally want to drive her car faster than 20 miles per hour. We're going up a gear. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like? I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thanks for all your emails about tonight's show so far. Helen says, Ben, never a truer word was said. And it's great to see you on the show. Thank you, Mum. Rosie says, it was right to let the marchers go ahead, and says a lot about this country in a good way. Everyone is free to express their beliefs here, and there are many, many places in the world where that is not the case. Probably Palestine, for example. We're lucky to live in such a country. Mitch, it's one thing to have protests about the poll tax. That was a domestic issue. Why should we have protests about Israel and Palestine on British soil? And Annie says, Darren looks very smart this evening. Where are you going, Darren? Why are you so smart?
Well, I'm so smart to honour and respect the people that fought and died for this country, unlike those heathens out on the streets.
Good man. Right, up next it's Diane, and she's a little bit vexed about modern speed limits. Off you go, Diane.
The 20-mile-per-hour speed limit was brought in to reduce collisions and injury caused by them. But we're not thinking about all the people who are injured inside their cars who are dying of boredom. Let's remember that they said, oh, it will slightly increase your journey time. Oh, because that's what we all want, isn't it? An increased commute, because we all know that increasing commuting leads to depression. I mean, have you ever met an astronaut at a party? No, because they're miserable. They do say that the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit helps health and it'll make us all healthier. I don't think so. No matter how much I lower my cholesterol, every time I get in my car, my blood pressure is going to go up. Also, the law is applied unequally. How many times have you been on the road and somebody whizzes past you on an e-scooter at somewhere between 30 miles per hour and warp factor 6? No, there's only one place where this 20-mile-per-hour speed limit really should be enforced, and that is actually outside schools. The rest of us? No. They should put the brakes on this idea, reverse parallel park it, and just let the rest of us continue with our motoring.
Yes.
Go on, darling. You would say, Ben was saying to me, he was going, I want to say things about this.
Well, look,
I literally have just been done. I've just been done. For,
in a 20?
Yeah.
How fast were you going?
I was going 24 in a Nissan Micra. Do you know how long it takes you to get to 24 miles per hour in a Nissan Micra? And I got binned for it.
Well, look, about 15 years ago, Brighton Council, where I live, probably the wokest council in Britain, the first green council in Britain, by the way, and they had the worst recycling rates in Europe, figure that one out. They were the first to introduce 20-mile-an-hour zones down in Brighton. They claimed it was for the environment, you're going to be driving slower. In actual fact, loads of studies have shown that if you're going 20 miles an hour, it's actually quite hard to stick to that limit because you're stuck in second gear. If you're in a higher gear, your revs are up, your emissions are going to be up. So that was completely debunked. And also, I get a cab from the studio after work here to Victoria quite late at night, and I'm always in a rush to get the very last train from Victoria. It's like the 2 minutes past midnight. I go down Park Lane, where it's 20 miles an hour, and if I get an absolute square of an Uber driver who sticks to the limit, you should stick to the limit, by the way, it's the law, I'm late for my train. I then have to spend another 2 hours going home because of a stupid 20-mile-an-hour limit down Park Lane. It's pathetic.
So your commute is massively increased. Yes, Albert.
Just for the sake of balance, I will play devil's advocate and defend the 20-mile-an-hour speed zone, because the whole idea of them, I think, at least in Wales, is they talk about it being healthier because it's going to encourage people to cycle more, because they're not going to be as scared as being hit by a car, and it's going to encourage people to walk more because the car's going to be going slower, they're not going to be going as loud, and it's basically encouraging people into active transport. So they're not in cars, they are being active, so the environment emissions are better, and also people are healthier as well.
But
it's a bit like an idea on Whitehall that sounds good on paper, but doesn't work so well in real life.
But it's OK for Wales because Wales has got an ageing population. Their population is very, very old. Yeah, but their population is super old. All the young people have run out of Wales screaming. And Wales is full of people who probably don't have their driver's licences anymore. We must remember that. And also, yes, you might be on a bus, But now the bus has to go at 20 miles per hour, and I've never met a bus driver who actually wants to go where he's going unless it's the end of his shift.
Darren, in Wales, it's a blanket, well, pretty much blanket 20 mile per hour ban. Is that a sign of things to come if we get a Labour government? Are we going to see the roads here just, come to a standstill?
Well, interestingly, I think the Labour Party are fighting like cats in a sack over this sort of thing, because on Question Time, and now I don't watch Question Time, I think actually you'd find that the BBC's EastEnders is less depressing than an episode of BBC Question Time. But the Labour, who is in the shadow, he is the shadow minister, Chris Bryant. Benjamin, his brief is...
My old pal.
I think he's chair of the Standards Committee.
He's not in the shadow cabinet.
Former chair.
Well, he described it as bonkers, and I thought, well, good on you, because I completely agree with you. It is bonkers. People are getting frustrated, and I think actually we saw this play out during COVID, right, where the Welsh government wanted to differentiate itself to prove devolution was doing something and be different from the rest of the country. This is what they're doing on this stupid rule that is absolutely doing nothing for the environment, but doing a hell of a lot for the nation's blood pressure. By the nation, I mean Wales. And I just think it's an attempt to say, look, devolution is actually worth something, when we all know that it's the biggest waste of money that we've ever seen.
Now, Benjamin, question for you as well. I realise you've got an opinion, but also 20 miles per hour, do we really need speed bumps anymore?
Oh, I hate speed bumps. They're a nightmare. But they do serve a rather important purpose so that you don't run over little kids. So, it's probably worth it. Look, I don't drive, and that's in everyone else's best interests. But the one thing I would say is that I think it should be 0 miles per hour in lots of parts of cities. There should be no cars.
Oh, no!
Oxford Street, the main shopping street in London, should ban cars. I was in Vienna this week. Beautiful. All their high streets are busy. There's no cars. People wander around. It's a much better quality of life. I don't want cars in cities.
On that bombshell, still ahead, Benjamin reckons the King's speech was the last squawk of a dying government. Well, that's a bit dramatic. I'll probably agree, though. I don't think he's wrong. Darren also gets passionate in Grime Time with a fierce defence of Suella Braverman. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Fed up of being patronised and bored to death by other afternoon news shows? Me too. So I thought, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself. News as it breaks on TV, radio and online. All the big debates and the best guests on the topics that you actually care about. Whether you're having discussions with your mates down the pub, in your van to and from work, or around the dinner table with your family, that's the kind of stuff that this show is all about. Join me, Patrick Christie, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you so much for your emails. Duncan says, "Hi, pal. I lost my son in 2021. He served for 9 years, tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. We lost him due to PTSD. I'm ashamed of the way the government let people disrespect our fallen." Duncan, sorry for getting emotional there, mate. I've got 2 sons of my own, and that hits home. And days like today are for your boy, and you should be really proud of him. Peter, just one question. Will anyone on these marches go to Gaza and help rebuild homes when the war ends? Oh, I doubt it, Peter. I think we all know the answer to that. Carol, the so-called protesters, how many of them can point out Gaza on a map or know the difference between Gaza Strip and the Gaza City? I don't know about you guys. I think we've got a map, actually. Should we have a crack? Oh, it's labelled. There we go. That's where the chant "from the river to the sea" comes on. So you've got the Jordanian River in between there somewhere, and of course the Mediterranean Sea, which a lot of Hamas supporters despicably want to throw Israelis in there. That's where the chant emanates from. And on to speed limits. Tracy says, "Well done, Diane Spencer. That's your lefty mates, isn't it?"
They're not my mates, Tracy. I mean, we all know that the left is fractured, and you can see why.
Now it's time for our next debate. Home Secretary Suella Braverman hit the headlines this week with a controversial newspaper piece in which she argued the police are biased. It seems her job may be hanging by a thread. Darren, is it time for her to go?
Give over. Get a grip. Of course not, right? And I'll tell you why. Because like our viewers, I'm gobsmacked, right, by what I've seen on the streets today. But then again, maybe I shouldn't, because I tell you what, we had psychic Suella, aka our very own Home Secretary. Suella Braverman must have had a crystal ball polished to perfection, because she predicted the chaos we've seen unfold word for word. Picture this. Politicians, right, and the chattering classes are having a collective meltdown over the racist parading through our streets. But hold on a minute, right? Where was this outrage when there were calls for jihad, for intifada, anti-Semitism and wiping Israel off the map? They were all flavour of the weekend, week after week since October 7th. The sort of stuff that also qualifies as racism. Where were they at calling that out? Not a whisper from these hypocrites. Even in the wake of those Hamas atrocities on October 7th, they're as shameless as a streaker at a football match. And who's the villain of their pantomime? Well, of course, it's none other than Suella Braverman. It's Suella derangement syndrome, because she penned a piece in the Times about two-tier policing and these hate marches. As if every Tom, Dick and Harry on the streets today were Suella disciples acting on her every word. Suella's been banging on about two-tier policing and hate marches and the alienation of those who hold our national remembrance dear. And guess what? If you ask me, she's not just Mystic Meg, she's Nostradamus, because she hit the nail on the head about this weekend's shenanigans. We've got pro-Palestine ruffians draping our war memorials in foreign flags, treating the Machine Gun Corps memorial at Wellington Arch like it's their personal plaything. And if that wasn't enough, we've got Hamas-style headbands making a fashion statement in London on Armistice Day, no less. We heard in that email that Ben just read out how important this day is to people who've known those who've served and even lost their lives in our armed forces. And then there's the tale of two-tier policing, a crackdown on Union Jack and St George flag wavers, while turning a blind eye to the pro-Palestine lot launching fireworks and missiles at our bobbies. I must have missed the memo where that kind of violence got the green light. So, if you ask me, I say there it is, clear as day. Suella Braverman wasn't just right, she was prophetic. The Telegraph says 72% of Conservative voters reckon today's protest should have been a no-go, out of respect. I think they're spot on. I'm with them. I'm with Suella. She saw it coming a mile off. The question is, which side of the line do you stand on today? I know where I'm at, and I know where Suella Braverman is at. Do you? Ben, I mean, are you unapologetically supportive of what Suella Braverman said? I think she's been utterly vindicated today.
Absolutely, and I think she speaks for the majority of right of centre Brits, and the fact that all the right people have got their knickers in a twist about not only her column about the police, but about multiculturalism, immigration, and even the homeless tents. She's hitting all the right notes with the centre-right argument. And in actual fact, I want the Tories to be obliterated at the next election. I want them to rediscover their Conservative values with people like Suella at the helm, maybe even Nigel Farage if he does well in the jungle and can garner a new base should he go into the jungle. So, yeah, I support her with no qualms.
Albie, would you leave the Conservative Party if Suella Braverman becomes Prime Minister?
No, I can't see any situation where I'd leave the Conservative Party, to be honest. I'm a
Too desperate for a seat.
That's what I'm here for, Benjamin. I'm not desperate for a seat, thank you very much. But what I will say about Suella is that, look, there are things that Suella has said which I think she's totally right on. I think she was totally right about the two-tier policing. I think if we look at how the Sarah Everard protesters were treated during the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter protests were treated during the pandemic, totally different. The police were heavy-handed with the women on Clapham Common, basically did nothing at the Black Lives Matter protests. I think both protests are worthy causes, by the way, but I'm just making the point that she was right on that. But my issue with Suella is I don't understand what the Tory right see in her. If she'd actually delivered something other than rhetoric, I can understand it. But what policy has she actually delivered? Nothing. What has she done in her time in government? Nothing. She just talks noise. She just makes noise, and then there's mayhem that happens around her, and there's not much else. So that is why I don't support Suella, because she's not good at her core job, which is being the Home Secretary.
Would you not argue, though, that's because there is a blob that disagrees with everything that she tries to do?
I don't think it's good enough.
So she can't get this through?
I don't think it's good enough for politicians who can't make their arguments well to say, there's a blob stopping me, or the Chancellor stopping me. You win arguments by making good arguments, having good evidence and winning them. And she's clearly not a very effective politician.
Well, you can't do that.
If she's not able to do anything as Home Secretary. If you look at when Theresa May was Home Secretary, she used similar inflammatory language, but she actually got stuff done.
Oh, she did not. Theresa May was about as much use as a chocolate
Immigration
teapot.
was lower under Theresa May than under Suella Braverman.
She obstructed Brexit, tried to stitch the country up with a dodgy deal.
Immigration was lower under Theresa May than under Suella Braverman.
No, I would argue that actually Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak are proven to be wetter than a knotter's pocket, and that's why actually Suella Braverman can't get anything through. But Benjamin Butterworth, I actually think that you must be looking at the scenes that we've seen on our streets today and saying, you know what, she's quite right, Suella.
No, it's like, you know, peering into a parallel universe where Ben says that she's hitting all the right notes and everyone agrees with her. Well, there was a poll this week that found that Suella Braverman is the most unpopular politician in Britain.
By who?
Which
The Guardian?
is quite an achievement. You know, you talk about...
The Canary?
Your whole monologue was, look, 72% of Tory voters think the protest should have been banned. Suella was right. Hang on. She didn't ban the protest, and she has that power in law. She didn't do it. It's typical of everything with Slow Sue. She says she'll do something. She tries to pander to people on the right of the Tory party because the only job she cares about is the next one she wants as Tory leader, and she doesn't actually do anything. If you think she was right and that you should have banned the protests, then tell me, why didn't she?
Because she's not the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I think actually you're proven, Benjamin, how out of touch the left are and the Labour Party are when it comes to the views of the Red Wall. That's why you lost the Red Wall, and you're going to continue to lose them, because I tell you what, people are watching the scenes unfold in London today and they're saying, I don't recognise my own country.
The people
and
I
the Labour
don't
Party
recognise...
are offering succour and support.
The people I don't recognise are the Tommy Robinson yobs and
here we
thugs
go.
that have been fighting using the name of the senator
are not linked to Tommy Robinson.
Exactly.
They weren't opposing anything. Hang on.
Tommy Robinson was there. Like, can we just say that actually there were some really deeply, quite far-right and ugly people on the right that were
there was a couple of dozen Tommy Robinson not there.
There were 92 arrested.
The rest of the country who opposed the march.
But we should say, Ben, as people on the right, that is totally unacceptable and they shouldn't have ruined Armistice Day like that. Can we not agree on that?
The police arrested, Benjamin just said there that the police arrested people from the Tommy Robinson side of the argument, but actually I would argue that the police have been shown that Suella was right in that
Why
they
can't
are
you criticise these far-right yobs?
Exactly.
They don't care about the
let's get
senator.
away from
They don't
Diane.
care about Armistice Day. They are just thugs that wanted an excuse to fight in the streets. And you look pathetic and weak to not call out people who are racist thugs who are defaming the name of the senator and Armistice Day.
I condemn it. I call it out. No problem.
Why
Diane,
can't
just
Darren?
going with you. Go back to Suella Braverman. I heard you calling her Superwoman Suella backstage. Is that right?
That is such a lie. Oh, my word. She's certainly a figure of contrast.
Yeah.
She is the daughter of immigrants, yet she is anti-immigration. She has all these fiery kind of words, and yet she does little.
But why does she have to be pro-immigration just because she's the daughter of immigrants?
Well, because she has benefited from immigration, because she has come to our country, and shouldn't other people have the chance?
That would be her argument. Suella's parents and my grandparents came to this country legally and they're invited here.
OK.
And my grandparents.
And integrated into British life, she would argue, yeah.
Right, moving on. Still ahead, the questions are flying in for Flummox the 5, but it's not too late to get yours in. Nothing is off the menu. What do you want to ask tonight? Why am I dressed like a James Bond villain, apparently? I thought it was quite a nice Christmas piece myself. Coming up, the government announced their agenda this week in the King's speech. Will they get a standing ovation from Benjamin Butterworth, I wonder? You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country.
only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you so much for your emails. A big response to Diane's rather desperate attempt to escape a speeding ban earlier this evening. Susan says, "Hi guys, I'm a driver living in Wales. Whilst I don't agree with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, what gets my blood boiling even more is when drivers insist on doing 15 in a 30-mile-an-hour zone."
Oh, thoughts and prayers to you, my darling.
Becky says, "I am 50. I live in Wales. There is no public transport." Sounds a bit rubbish. "My house is in a rural area. 20 miles per hour is not a good call." Lorraine says, "Benjamin..." I don't think I want to read this. It says, "Benjamin is on the money. Public transport or even better walking is the best way to travel around." Come on, Lorraine.
I did send that one myself, but much like Lorraine Kelly, Lorraine is my public profile, not my real self.
She goes on, "In the future, they will look back and laugh at us charging around on our own in our little metal boxes, puffing pollution." Yeah, okay, yeah. Richard says, "First time I've watched, brilliant, good to laugh." Thank you, Richard. Right, now it's time for our next debate. It's Benjamin, and he's going to give his forensic analysis of probably, in my opinion, the most boring King's speech in the history of this country. Benjamin, take it away.
Yes, it was the King's speech, the first King's speech in 70 years this week. It was the last legislative agenda to be put forward in this Parliament, and almost certainly the last one from a Tory for a long time. And what did Rishi Sunak do for this big moment, this big final pitch to try and win some voters back so that there's at least one Tory MP after the next election? Well, he had almost nothing to say. Just 21 bills were put forward, which was some of the fewest ever announced in a monarch's speech to Parliament, and it was one of the longest speeches ever given. So he says a lot, but has no plans of doing anything. And among the stuff he announced was saying that we should get tough on crime, that we should have longer prison sentences. And he delivers this on the back of 13 years, where now we are so short of prison cells that judges are having to let people out early. They're even planning to rent prison cells from other countries because the system is so messed up. And then, one of the big questions of the day, the NHS. More than 6 million people sitting on waiting lists. One of the reasons why we have so many millions of people unable to work because they're getting sick. And what did Rishi Sunak have to say in the King's speech that he put forward? Nothing. Absolutely nothing on fixing the healthcare crisis, let alone issues like inflation or the economy. And so that's why it couldn't have been clearer in this King's speech that this government is tired, out of ideas, and needs to be out of office. Now, Albie, you're a desperate Tory hack.
How did I know you were going to come to me first, Benjamin?
What I genuinely found remarkable, dare I be objective, is that this really is an opportunity for the government to have a pitch to voters, to try and lay out something exciting and enticing. And I was genuinely amazed that there was nothing new in there was nothing significant in there. Do you think they're just exhausted?
No, I don't think the government is exhausted. I do think there could have been more in the King's speech. One of the things that I was disappointed not to see in there as the Vice Chair of the LGBT plus Conservatives was the conversion therapy ban. But that's no longer happening, and fair enough on the Prime Minister for making that decision. So there were parts of the King's speech which I was disappointed about. There were other parts of the King's speech which I thought were quite good. I think some of the new bills that were coming through on crime, things to do with arbitration, also people who were in favour of the smoking ban, which is very popular with the British public, that was also in there. So there were definitely things in that bill to excite the British people. But the question is that enough to get us over the line at the next general election? And I'm not sure if it was. I still think we need some more big ideas.
I think it was small ideas. I mean, I know the smoking ban is popular, but look, it's not going to sway anyone's vote in reality, I suspect.
Darren, these are the last dying days of a crumbling Tory failed empire, aren't they?
Well, I sort of zoned out a little bit. I heard that there were fewer prison cells, but after listening to that, I think I've got fewer brain cells. Because actually, if you actually argue that the Labour Party would make all of these issues better, you can go sing for your supper. Crime and law and order in this country under Sadiq Khan has been an absolute travesty. The idea that that's all going to get better under Labour. Pull the other one, Benjamin. Even you can't sell that one, and you work for a newspaper.
I mean, it's it's rich, you know, from someone who voted to Theresa May, I suspect, the only Prime Minister that's ever defunded the police. You know, when she was Home Secretary, 20,000 police officers were sacked. So if you talk about why crime has gone up, which it has, it might have something to do with that. Ben, you're sort of crazy right-wing. Do you think there's a version of this Tory party that could win you over?
They're in government now?
Yeah.
No, they're finished. I want them obliterated, out of office. I want a Labour government, or I want 5 years of chaos under Labour, and that should hopefully put a rocket up the Tories' backsides to rediscover some Conservative values, do what their members want them to do, because at the moment they're just completely undemocratic, not listening to the people that pull the strings and are the most important. And, yeah, as I said, I want the Tories to get absolutely annihilated because they deserve it.
When you make an omelette, you smash all the eggs. It doesn't matter even if you're not using them.
So you would really rather Keir Starmer as Prime Minister?
We need it. We need this country to experience the pain before we can rediscover everything else.
But what you wish for.
Let's move on. So that's all for our first hour tonight. Plenty more to come, including 5 great topics to discuss in Bunch of 5. Those weirdos at Nestle have scrapped Karamak chocolate bars, the snack of my childhood. And online doctors are flogging sick notes for £39. Has anyone got their email or number? You can also flummox the 5 as well. So keep your questions coming in for that. You're watching the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Those of us that hold on to clear skies overnight do have the chance of seeing the aurora, so keep an eye out. Unfortunately for southern areas of England and Wales, it is going to turn increasingly cloudy as this band of rain pushes its way in. Could be some heavy pulses at times, also quite windy, particularly along coastal areas. The rain, though, feeding in some milder air, so temperatures here holding up a touch more overnight, but where you hold on to the clear skies across northeast England into Scotland, it will be very chilly with some frost. Also, these locations seeing some fog forming, and that will provide for quite a murky start to Sunday morning. Could be quite slow to clear, lasting until the start of the afternoon in some places, but once it does leave its way off, there will be some sunny spells for Scotland and northeast England. Elsewhere, this band of rain pushing its way in, heavy pulses following on behind that as well. Perhaps lighter and patchy for parts of southeast England, but still fairly cloudy throughout a good portion of the day. Temperatures generally between 7 and 13 degrees Celsius, but feeling particularly cold where the fog does linger throughout a good portion of the day. On Monday, our attention returns to this area of low pressure. There is still some uncertainty in regards to how the jet stream is going to help spin this up and develop it, but it does look like it could be a pretty widely unsettled day with this band of heavy rain moving its way through, followed by some blustery showers behind that, a swathe of gales pushing across areas of England and Wales. Quite breezy across northern areas of Scotland as well. The precipitation more showery here, and into the middle part of the week as well. We will hold on to a fairly unsettled theme with sunshine and showers. Bye-bye.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us. From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night. This is the Saturday 5. I am Ben Leo, along with Albie Amankona, Diane Spencer, Benjamin Butterworth and Darren Grimes. Lots more to come tonight, including Bunch of 5, where we take the week's biggest topics and give you our verdict. This week, we'll be asking, should the King have worn a black poppy? Why have we become a nation of skivers? And the most divisive topic of all, Karamak or Animal Bar. Karamak every day of the week. A nation decides. It's 8 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Also, still to come this hour, we'll be joined by the lovely Belinda de Lucy, who was at the Cenotaph earlier today to pay her respects to our war dead. And we'll ask whether Nigel Farage has what it takes to be crowned King of the Jungle. He was pictured at Heathrow Airport earlier today, shuffling on a cigarette, so make of that what you will. And of course, we want to know your views as well. Get in touch by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com. And don't forget, Flummox the 5. You can ask us anything and we'll answer at the end of the show. Unscripted, unprepared, and usually uninspiring, depending on who you ask. But before that, it's your Saturday Night News with Aaron.
Hello, it's 8:01. Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Prime Minister has condemned what he's described as violent scenes from far-right groups and Hamas sympathisers after an eventful day of demonstrations in London. Hundreds of thousands of people took part in a pro-Palestinian rally in the capital. They're calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. One of the biggest political demonstrations in British history also coincided with Armistice Day. Now, the vast majority of protesters dispersed peacefully around 6 o'clock, but police have since detained a breakaway group of around 150 pro-Palestinian demonstrators wearing face coverings and letting off fireworks in Mayfair. Rishi Sunak says all criminality must be met with the full and swift force of the law. Well, earlier in central London, 92 counter-protesters were arrested amid ongoing clashes with police. Scuffles took place in Pimlico and Westminster, with the Met Police saying the majority of arrests were to prevent a breach of the peace. It comes as the Home Secretary has been accused of stoking tensions and emboldening the far right. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, has said the police have been trying to disperse the crowds.
Well, police have now moved in. They're trying to clear this main road going over Westminster Bridge. We've had protesters from both sides, pro-Palestinian protesters and also these counter-protesters here. They have been clashing sporadically as two groups have come together, but it's been pretty well contained by the Metropolitan Police and these other forces who are here today on mutual aid. But it remains fairly tense, a bit volatile when people from time to time are coming together as they head for the tube station to head home. Lots of police here in Parliament Square to be able to deal with any eventuality in the hours ahead.
And now, the events did not mar today's 2-minute silence, which police say was respectfully observed. Well, the UK paused on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month to mark Armistice Day, the end of World War I, and to honour those who've served in conflicts around the world. World War II veteran John Dennett said the servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice must be remembered.
We must never forget what happened years ago through all the wars that enabled us to be where we are. Like, we're lucky. And the kids, I always say to the kids, without remembrance, and remember it, because if you don't, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those lads who gave their life, and it runs into thousands.
And the Israeli military says it will help evacuate babies trapped in Gaza's largest hospital tomorrow. It comes after the Red Cross said it's shocked and appalled by the images and reports emerging from the Al-Shifa hospital, where operations have been suspended. Palestinian officials say a baby has died and dozens more patients are at risk as a result of Israeli gunfire in the vicinity earlier today. But Israel says doctors, patients and thousands of evacuees who've taken refuge at hospitals in northern Gaza must leave so it can tackle Hamas gunmen. Israel claim they have placed command centres under and around those facilities. This is GB News, live across the UK. I'll be back with more a little bit later. Now let's return to the Saturday Five.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday Five. I'm Ben Leo and I can promise you, you're in for a very lively hour, which will climax, a bit weird, with Flummox the Five. So keep your questions flying in. Now it's time for a bunch of five, where we spin through 5 of the week's big stories and give our always well-considered and thoughtful opinions. A bit generous. As we remember the fallen on Armistice Day and as people march in the streets for Palestine, has the world forgotten the plight of Ukrainians who died in their hundreds of thousands while people march for Palestinians? Why do we march for Palestinians and not others, Benjamin?
I mean, I think it's a very good point because, you know, in Yemen and Syria and so many other countries where huge numbers, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, some of those, you know, Muslim countries, and yet, strangely, it's this conflict that people always get hung up on. On the specific point about Ukraine, you know, I am cynical that there is an axis of authoritarianism between China and Iran and Russia, and they benefit enormously, Russia, from distracting everyone from what's going on in Ukraine. It is, you know, they're not doing a terribly good job at trying to invade Ukraine. They've been struggling. But this is the best help they could have, is to distract the world. And you see in the US, now that you've got 2 wars that are very expensive, the appetite for paying for them is going down. I think Russia's probably delighted.
There's also an issue with Ukraine fatigue, which is something that President Zelensky spoke about, because we've actually just had the first anniversary of the liberation of Kherson, which is wondrous. Have we really heard about that in the news? Are we celebrating that? No. And Zelensky is obviously very worried that Ukraine is going to slip out of the news and then all his funding will go. And we heard that footage from the Italian Prime Minister, who was tricked into picking up the phone. Did you see that story? She said, oh, yeah, we're all getting tired of Ukraine and we're trying to find some way out of it. And that is not what the Ukrainian people want to hear. And it's a little bit odd because I got to a point where I was watching the news about Ukraine thinking, OK, and now the news about our country. What's happening in our country? Like, yes, this is incredibly important, but what's happening? And now we're very focused on the conflict in the Middle East. And yeah, it's just completely slipped out of the news.
Well, you talked about Ukraine fatigue there. Isn't half of that down to... I don't know if you saw that clip that did the rounds this week online of Zelensky pleading down the camera saying, I need more money, send me more money. I'll do it on credit if needs be. I'll pay you back after the war. Aren't we just getting a bit bored of sending money to Ukraine when there's lots of problems back home that we could be sorting out?
Well, if that works, you know, I'll be asking the internet to clear my credit card bill. But look, I actually think that ultimately there's going to be a wider conversation on Ukraine and maybe perhaps a pushback, especially when it comes to the American conversation. Because if Trump is re-elected next year, that's going to be a very different conversation to the one that we're having right now.
OK, moving on. Nigel Farage was fuming when it was noted that King Charles was seen wearing a black poppy, not your red one, a black one. On the face of it, it's a gesture to acknowledge the immense sacrifice made by people of colour from around the Commonwealth who fought for the country. But on Remembrance Day, we remember all people. The red poppy is for people of all colour and all creed. So, should the King have worn the black poppy, Albie?
Yes, I was delighted to see the King wear a black poppy. Look, at the end of the day, if you're upset about a black poppy, I've got one right here. I went down to the Black Cultural Archives in Brixton today to go and get this black poppy and this one too, to go and understand about the huge sacrifice that black people made from around the world. Hundreds of thousands of black Americans, black Africans and black Caribbean people actually fought in both world wars. And all this little poppy is to commemorate them, because often they're completely forgotten. It's not a group of people who are really taught about in schools and their contribution to the war. And that is why I think this sort of thing is important.
Should we have a look at Nigel's rant about this, and viewers can make up their mind? Have a look.
What's it all about? Well, on the face of it, it's to honour black servicemen that were killed serving in the wars, who some people believe are underrepresented. And you're seeing a picture here of Selina Carty, who founded this movement back in 2010. But it also represents black people who fought against the British in a variety of wars. And it also represents a demand for reparations.
OK, well, we'll let the nation decide on that. I mean, I think I agree with Nigel, but there we go. Doctors have accused Britain's largest online pharmacy of making it too easy to get a sick note after launching a service allowing people to be signed off work by recording a 30-second video describing their symptoms. Oh, I've got a bad stomach. If you submit the recording before 9 p.m, they can receive the sick note from a GMC-registered doctor on the same day for £39. Diane, are we a nation of skivers?
No, but clearly we're a nation that, you know, love doing selfies and require acting lessons, because before it was so difficult to get a sick note. You had to warm yourself up, you had to, you know, go, and I am measles, and you had to walk into the doctors and go, oh, I just don't think I could go into work for 6, 7, 8 days. There we go. But now it's so easy. These people have got no training. I expect RADA is fuming, to be honest.
Ben, how many sickies have you pulled this year?
I remember when I was a kid, the only day I ever skived off school, and I made Weetabix and orange juice and threw it on the kitchen floor to look like vomit.
Oh. Genius, see? Creativity.
And then it was because Gordon Brown was giving a budget, and I was desperate to stay home and watch it rather than go to school.
Oh, my goodness.
Nerd. You're a nerd.
Really not very related.
Did you have any friends?
No, But look, do you know what? I don't think we're a nation of skivers. Actually, all the evidence says that Britons work long hours, work very hard, and yet we're still a pretty unproductive economy. So I think the problems we have in this country are not from people skipping work because they're pretending to be sick or not working long enough. It's because structurally we're not very productive in the jobs we do in the first place.
I disagree.
£39 for a sick note and a day off work. Well, it could be an extended week off work, depending on your statutory rights. That's a bit of a bargain, isn't it, Darren?
I think we are becoming a nation. I mean, we're all working from home these days, and let's be absolutely honest, I don't care what anybody says. If you work from home, and I say this as someone that works from home during the week...
I was about to say, where do you work from most of the week?
You are more likely to slack off, right? And that, I think, is deeply troubling for the economy.
Right, let's crack on with the next one. We're always being told to pick a side these days. The nation's never felt so divided. But this could be the one that tips us over the edge. Caramac or Animal Bar? And I'd quite confidently say that you three, at least, won't know what a Caramac is. You're so young.
Oh, good I've never heard of a Caramac in my life.
What's an animal bar?
Doesn't that tell us?
Well, let me explain what's happened with the Caramac bar. So look, Nestlé's announced that it will be discontinuing both chocolate bars. Which one would you save? Caramac, I'd save every day of the week. It was the chocolate of my childhood. My dad always used to buy me one from the garage. Loved it.
That's the issue. It's the chocolate of your childhood. Have you continued to buy Caramacs for your children?
No.
If you don't spend the money, then you cannot expect to have the products there. That's why I like to shop in the places that are local to me. That's why I don't always buy things online, because I want to support those local things. And Cadbury bought out a rival, the Caramilk, and that is probably going to overtake the Caramac. And to be honest with you, it's very, very sweet. It doesn't really taste of chocolate.
You're just slagging them off because you make your own fudge.
I do.
But look, moving on. And by the way, her fudge is amazing. She bought some in tonight, top tier. Moving on. Dior has released a perfume for babies. You heard. A perfume for babies. It will set you back £230 for 100 millilitres. Who's buying this? During a cost of living crisis, it's nice to know the obscenely rich are doing well. But even if you're loaded, who is buying perfume for babies? Albie, are you a culprit?
No, because I don't have children. I was going to ask you whether or not you would consider buying this perfume for your children.
Well, I went on a cruise a couple of weeks ago with the partner and my two boys. I bought some quite posh Bulgari aftershave, and then I got upsold. Well, she attempted to upsell me some Bulgari for kids, which was about £300 for a small. I think it's similar, 100 millilitres. I sprayed it, I smelt it, and it smelt like the perfumed nappy sacks that you put.
Oh, wow.
You put the sort of nappies in. So I said, no, thank you for the offer, but no.
It's ridiculous giving children perfume. Like, there is a point. I used to be a secondary school teacher, and when they go to year 9, they suddenly all come in, and I'll be honest with you, they smell quite bad, because suddenly they're all, like, growing, and their puberty and their hormones hit, and they all come in and they're smelling, and then it's just cheap aftershave all over the place. And that's kind of a rite of passage. But to sort of be an adult and tell your children, no, you need to smell this certain way, there's something a bit creepy about that I don't like.
Let kids...
Yeah, why don't you just have Lynx Africa? It works for most people. Stick a bit of that on them.
Yeah, let kids be kids. Right, still to come tonight, we'll be speaking to Belinda DeLucy, who was at the Cenotaph today. We're going to show you some pictures people were left bloodied and bruised after scuffles, so don't go away. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Fed up of being patronised and bored to death by other afternoon news shows? Me too. So I thought, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself. News as it breaks on TV, radio and online. All the big debates and the best guests on the topics that you actually care about. Whether you're having discussions with your mates down the pub, in your van to and from work, or around the dinner table with your family, that's the kind of stuff that this show is all about. Join me, Patrick Christie's 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new t-shirt.
It's your new t-shirt. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like? I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thanks for your emails about tonight's topics. Andy on Twitter, Braverman says, good to see a politician that speaks the truth for once and the views of the majority instead of listening to the views of the minority. Benjamin, take note. She's got more balls than some of all the male MPs in Parliament. Let's hope she becomes our next PM. Well, you never know these days. Might be possible. Werner says, why do the GB News panels only ever assume that it has to be a Labour or Tory government? A lot of us are going to vote reform. Darren, why are you banging on about the Tories and Labour all the time?
Well, because we've got an electoral system in this country that simply does not allow that to happen. That will never be a possibility unless large swathes of us start voting for reform, which I guess is possible, Werner, but I think the electoral system royally screws over parties like Reform.
And last one, the most important one, I think. Gary says, I'm also gutted that Nestle have stopped making my favourite chocolate bar, Caramac. I've ordered 24 bars online and I'm keeping them for myself.
Oh, wow.
You greedy so-and-so. Send me one, please, Gary. Moving on, former Brexit Party MEP, the lovely Belinda de Lucy, was at the Cenotaph this morning to mark her respects for the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice. I'm proud to say she joins us now. Belinda, I didn't know you'd turn into a far-right yob. Please explain your bigotry.
Yes, oh, I know. Outrageous, isn't it? How dare I? I felt it was really important to show my respects today for not only our fallen in the First and Second World War, but those who've recently fallen in the Afghan wars. Over 400 British families have lost loved ones relatively recently, and they're still suffering. And I feel like it was the right thing to do, especially today of all todays, when there's a sort of climate of hate that's been going on the London streets and in our stations for the past 4 weeks.
Yeah. Did you have any trouble with the pro-Palestine mob today?
The only time I came into contact with them was at the Victoria tube station. And there was a moment where I had to leave the carriage because I felt some very unwanted, intense stares that felt uncomfortable, and I trusted my instincts and I got off the carriage and I waited for another one to go back. I'm deeply sad, and they felt today was appropriate to march in hundreds of thousands like this, especially seeing all the footage and the placards. You know, they talk about far-right yobs. The only people carrying placards with swastikas were those in the pro-Palestinian marches.
Yeah. Disgraceful. You tweeted about that earlier tonight. You said Suella was right. Week after week, we've seen how Jewish hatred and racism has been emboldened by soft-touch responses. Don't tell me these protests are about peace. I don't know if we've got a picture of the tweet, but explain to us the placards that you saw.
So these have been going on for weeks. People who attend the marches saying they're peaceful, no, they march alongside those who carry placards like this, because they've been doing it again and again. They know Islamist radicals infiltrate these marches and anti-Semites, but they choose to march with them. And I tell you something I did today was when about an hour after the two-minute silence, I was near Parliament Square and I was starting to hear football songs being chanted. And I thought, I don't want to share a platform with an energy that has felt a bit sour. I'm going to leave straight away. If only people on the pro-Palestinian marches did the same, but they seemed quite happy to march with haters.
So the pictures that you tweeted, there was one with a white British lady carrying a placard with the Star of David that had morphed into a swastika, for example. I mean, it's just repulsive. No, look, I blame the Tory government for 13 years of this nonsense that we've seen on the scenes of London today. How do you think Reform UK would have handled the build-up to the march? Would they have banned it? Would they have allowed it to go ahead? What do you think would have happened?
We believe in the right to peaceful protest and the right to free speech, absolutely. But we would have, without doubt, rescheduled it. We would not have allowed it to occur today. It's so disrespectful to the vast majority of people in this country, including all the Muslims and Hindus and all those around the world who sacrificed their lives fighting the Nazis. And we would have definitely not allowed it to go on today. I think it's disgusting and shameful that it was allowed.
Who's to blame? Is it the cops or the government for not pressing harder?
I blame the Conservative government for overseeing a soft touch on certain hateful ideologies that have been allowed to root in this country and that have been given cover and sanctuary by the hard left. They have not been robust enough, and they've created a climate of fear and no-go areas for our Jewish communities by not being tough enough decades ago.
Yeah. It's disgraceful, and just bearing in mind the fact there's only 300,000 Jews in this country. I never knew that until a week or so ago, and I was astounded at just how few of them are. So look, Belinda, moving on, our well-beating production team tell me you're making your debut as one of the 5 next week. You'll be in here with us, so we look forward to seeing you then. But for the time being, thank you so much. You're a legend, you're a friend, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you so much. See you later. Love you.
Yes, now still ahead, folks. We're going to be joined by Bobby Davro, of course, aren't we? So tease that. But I think what she was saying there, what Belinda saw, is familiar with what Diane was saying just earlier in the last hour. If no one caught that, Diane, you were saying that actually there were people praying outside of a prayer room on a service station, and you felt quite intimidated by that. Belinda saying she felt intimidated to such an extent that she had to get out of a tube station. Yeah. I mean, what's going on here where women in Britain are feeling intimidated and threatened?
Well, it is simply that. I read somewhere that committing an act like that is a form of jihad. Now, I read that, and I'm not saying that that is what those people were doing. Maybe
what, staring at women? Staring women at?
Staring at women and... no, it was the praying purposefully.
Right.
The thing that I experienced, which was I was in a service station, it was the reception area. Their praying literally blocked the entrance. So you couldn't go in without sort of shuffling around people praying. And there was a dedicated prayer room. Now, there is a chance they did not know that there was a dedicated prayer room. And it was raining outside, right? But...
Benjamin, you're muttering and shaking your head there. What's your issue with concern about public praying? Yeah, sorry,
finish with that.
Apologies.
The thing is that it was the eyeballing, because you can feel, if you're an intuitive person, which a lot of us are, you can feel when somebody doesn't like you and they're glaring at you. And she just described that on that train carriage to the point where she had to get off the train carriage. Because I'm sorry, but like I said before, I know a lot of Muslim people who follow Islam, and they're brilliant, wonderful people. But there are some who take elements of Islam and completely warp it and really push it, and they're the people who don't want people like me to have an education and all of that.
Yeah, totally.
I wasn't actually muttering, I was just breathing, Ben. Sorry about that. But, you know, what I would say is that, you know, what Belinda described with that tube train is something that a lot of Jewish people have been feeling, to the extent, and half of that 300,000 lives in London, that they don't leave their homes on the weekends. A Jewish friend of mine sent me a text the other day, and it was a screenshot of one of his relatives, and she runs a small business, and someone had found out that she was Jewish and therefore said, I don't want to do business with you anymore. And I think that situation is sadly a lot more common than you would expect. You saw it at a university in the last week or so, where they refused to play a Jewish sports team in the university because they were Jewish. What you need to say to these people is that you are not helping anybody in the Middle East by extending that bigotry into your lives here. You're making everyone's lives harder.
Yeah.
Albie, just touching on your point of public praying, I know a lot of people received some flack when they raised concerns about that mass call to prayer in Whitehall, just outside Downing Street the other week. I was unsettled by it. Is that a fair assessment to have when you see that kind of thing? I mean, they shut down Whitehall for it, for God's sake.
Look,
or is it just bigoted?
I don't know that it's bigoted. I feel unsettled by that sort of thing too. I just do. I don't know why it is. It just makes me feel unsettled when people just break out into prayer in public spaces. By the way, I feel very unsettled by Christians who shout on megaphones, by the way. So it's just religious people in general shouting on megaphones.
It's a Christian country.
I'm culturally Christian, Ben, but what I'm saying is, what I don't like is when I feel that things are being shoved down my throat, and I don't mind if it's a Muslim doing that or a Christian doing it. I don't like it, and I can understand why people feel very uncomfortable and put off by that. And I think what we have seen in this country, in this city today, are the worst elements of society come out. We've seen racists on the far right come out. We've seen anti-Semites on the left and within the Muslim population come out. And it is just... it's terrifying, and it's really, I don't recognise the country that we're in.
OK, lots to get through still. We'll be discussing Nigel Farage potentially going into the jungle. He was pictured, I don't know if you've seen these snaps, they're online. He was pictured at Heathrow today, puffing on a cigarette. Where was he going? No idea. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country.
only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday 5. As always, thank you so much for your emails. Some more just dropped. Andy says, you've strongly condemned the pro-Palestine mob marching today. Just to be clear, do you equally condemn the far-right hate mob who attacked the police too? Well, Andy, if you've been watching, yes, I have already. 82 of those people were arrested earlier today. How many, can you tell me, please, were arrested from the Palestine march for singing From the River to the Sea? 0 as it stands, I believe. Happy to be corrected on that. Bill says, hi all, Suella Braverman is the only politician who says what 99% of the country thinks. Benjamin, take note. Suella for Prime Minister, yes. John says, Benjamin is right about working long hours. I never see him off the telly. Sorry about that, John. Apologies.
I do apologise.
Paul says, loving the Saturday 5, love all the views, left, right and centre, but love a Karamak even more. Benjamin is awesome.
Oh, wow.
This is... Something's changed.
How much you been paid?
Now, time for our next guest, Albie.
We are being joined by the legendary comedian Bobby Davro to be discussing tonight's main issue, of course, Bobby, which is our colleague Nigel Farage is rumoured to be going into the celebrity, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. I'm wondering, have you ever been asked to go on?
Well, I think many years ago I was asked, but I can't because I'm an arachnophobic. I'm terrified of spiders. So if you want to see me terrified, you'd see me on that. I'd probably end up having a heart attack. Arachnophobia is the phobia. It's not like anarachnophobia, which is a fear of train spotters.
Bobby, you have been, I believe, on Celebrity Big Brother. So what sort of thing is Nigel getting himself in for here?
Well, Nigel's a strong fella. I like him very much. I did an interview with him and we had a laugh. And I think a laugh is what we want, really, in this world now. I mean, it's been an absolutely hideous day today. I'm wearing my poppy with pride because whenever I see a poppy, I always think of my old granddad because he was a heroin addict. He wasn't really. He wasn't.
Oh, Bobby.
He fought with the Germans, he fought with the Italians, he fought with the Japanese. He couldn't get on with anyone.
Soldiers, Bobby. But tell us, if you were going into the jungle yourself, what would you be most scared about?
Well, I'm scared of spiders. And keep me calling. And maybe someone else in there that would give me the creeps as well. I mean, I look at the great. I'm hoping they're going to bring in a show next year. I used to be a celebrity. Can you get me back in there, please?
You're a celebrity to me and everyone at home, I'm sure. Is there anyone you would really hate to be put into the jungle with?
Listen, hate is a terrible word to use at the moment. No, hate should be abolished. I don't hate anyone. I dislike a few, but I don't hate anyone. Someone that makes us laugh. We've got to have someone in there that makes us laugh, because laughter is the best medicine, unless you got what I got, and that's erectile dysfunction. That's just cruel.
And on the subject of making us laugh, Bobby, on the subject of making us laugh, comedy's changed a lot in recent years. You know, there's a lot of talk of brilliant comedies like Little Britain being racist nowadays. Do you think Little Britain is racist or funny?
I wouldn't classify. I don't want to get into this conversation. I don't think everything is funny if you can laugh at it. That's the bottom line of it. People used to react to prejudice. Now they actively seek it. People go out to be offended, and offence isn't given. I'm a comedian. I don't go out to offend anyone. But some people choose to be offended, and you can be offended about anything you like, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean to say we should all be offended about the same thing. As long as you're out there laughing with people and you're not laughing at people, or you're creating grief, or violence, don't do that. Just go out and have a laugh, and we should all be free to laugh. It's a free world. We've got free speech. Let's laugh instead of if you can't laugh, you smile. So don't let the world change your smile. Get our smiles to change the world. That's what I say.
And Bobby, apart from your wonderful self, and of course Diane Spencer, who was on our panel tonight, who would you say is the top comedian that we should all be looking out for? Who's the funniest man or woman on stage at the moment?
I like a bit of Michael McIntyre, yes! And all the John Bitted. But bring back Doddy. By Jove, they should bring a show back for us called Still Alive at the Apollo, where we can be on there with some of the youngsters. You know, the Alan Carrs. I could do me Alan. Oh, yeah, it's Alan Carr. We all need a good old laugh. Yay! We need to laugh. Ben, we don't need all this grief
Bobby,
we're watching every day. It brings people down.
Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. That was Bobby Dabro, the legendary comedian. So, panel, what did you make of what Bobby had to say about Nigel potentially going into the jungle?
I had a chat with Nigel a couple of days ago and I said, are you going in, are you not? And he said, still undecided. And I said, what's the potential upside for you? And he reckons last year, 10 million people watched I'm a Celebrity at its peak, around sort of 20 to 35-year-olds. He thinks it's a massively untouched section of the electorate that he could potentially win over and convince that he's a good guy and he's a nice guy, which is the truth. And if he gets back into politics, he's got swathes of new voters then to back him.
Benjamin Butterworth, isn't that what Nadine Dorries tried to do?
I mean, God, where do you start with her? You know, I think Nigel Farage could win it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because he is extremely charming. You know, objectively, that is true. But obviously, he has a programme here at GB News, and every time I've seen him in this building, he's always puffing on a cigarette outside. So my fear for him is, if he does go into the jungle, how's he going to cope?
I did ask him that.
In his pint.
What was the answer?
Well, I said, Nigel, my one concern if you go in is that you're not going to be able to drink, you're not going to be able to smoke, and also you won't have any coffee or caffeine on tap as regular as you enjoy now. He said, just in case I do go in, I've been training the last 5 or 6... Wow. He said the last 5 or 6 days, he stopped smoking, he stopped drinking, and also he stopped drinking coffee. And he said caffeine is the worst thing. But actually, seeing these pictures today from Heathrow where he's puffing on a cigarette, I think he's already failed on the facts one.
Where could he be flying to? It's a mystery. Nobody knows.
Diane Spencer, what will you be most excited if Nigel does go into the jungle to see him eat in terms of the awful things that they get the celebrities to eat?
Oh my gosh, no, I can't even watch that programme. I think the most revolting thing is when they make them eat. Ofcom, please forgive me, but the kangaroo's anus. I mean, I believe that is a biological enough description for what it is.
Yes.
And I'm absolutely repulsed by the entire programme. I saw Melanie Sykes fighting with spiders in a dishwasher. I don't need to ever see that again. It's emblazoned on my memory. I'm not a big fan, but I think, from what I know of reality programmes, he will do exceptionally well if he's going.
Darren Grimes, have you ever eaten a kangaroo's anus?
I have never have, but for 1.5 million, which is the reported figure that he could have been offered, you know, I would eat anything for 1.5 million.
On a serious note, which other GB News presenters would you like to see go in the jungle? Would you do it?
Oh, I would do it, yeah, I would do it.
You'd do it for free, wouldn't you?
Do you know what? The thing is, jumping out of the helicopter, that's the bit that scares me. I'm terrified of heights.
Yeah.
So that would be the hard part. I'm also scared of spiders, but I would do that. I would get in a box with a load of spiders. I mean, it's hard enough getting, you know, into a room with Benjamin Butterworth. So.
Well, I mean, I just a couple of weeks ago was in a jungle on a tropical island in the Indian Ocean where I, you know, ate bark and lived off maggots and lived with a hunter-gatherer tribe. So I think my audition is firmly...
Was that Labour Party conference?
It was Britain under Liz Truss.
What climate emergency?
I walked to Indonesia, that's right. But look, do you know what? Getting back down to nature and escaping all the noise and chaos of big city life, of politics, I think that would be good for Nigel Farage and a lot of other people.
All right, David Attenborough.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. No, if you're going to go into the jungle, I'd prefer to take somebody who'd be really interesting and fascinating, like Dr. Maggie Haderin-Pocock. She's a British space scientist. And if I had to go into the jungle, I would want to take her with me, because then as soon as it got dark, she would know everything.
She doesn't make me want to watch I'm a Celebrity.
She sounds a bit serious.
I've got to be honest.
No, she's really fun.
OK.
On a serious note, what could this do? I mean, if Nigel does get back into politics and the Tories are, fingers crossed, wiped out at the next election, Labour take over, and then Nigel potentially, you know, gets back into the Conservative Party
a younger audience
with Suella and Priti, and then Nigel's got this new audience that would potentially vote for him. Is that a serious concept, or am I just talking out my backside?
Well, look, anything could happen, Ben. First of all, we don't know whether or not he's going into the jungle. We don't know if the Tories are going to lose the next general election. And we don't actually know if he'd be let back in to the Conservative Party. This is what a lot of people keep forgetting. This is a man who campaigned against the Conservative Party for the last 30 years. This is a man who will be campaigning against the Conservative Party at the next general election. Conservative Party members can be very loyal.
They want him.
But the point that I'm making is, There'll be people, activists going out like me, on the doorsteps for our candidates, and Nigel and the Reform Party will be campaigning against us. Now, will those people really want to let those people who campaigned against us, lost us the election if we lose, back into the party?
Well, he won you the election in 19. Farage won Boris that 19 election. They stood down all the Brexit
I think
party
there were a
seats.
number of factors that came together in 2019 that won it for the Conservatives. The Brexit Party standing down was one of them. Get Brexit Done was one of them. Brexit was one of them. Boris Johnson was one of them. And also Jeremy Corbyn was one of them. And we've got to think about all of those different factors in the round, and that is what delivered that 2019 majority.
Right, quick fire questions. Which GB News presenter do you want to see in the jungle? Benjamin?
Trying to think of one I can't stand, so it has to be Boris Johnson.
Diane?
Mark Dolan.
Oh, he'd be great.
Yeah.
Darren?
Well, I would have to be Boris Johnson.
Albie?
Who would I like to see? Maybe Tom Harwood.
Yeah, I'd say Eamon Holmes. He's a legend. I know he's got struggles with his health these days, but I think he'd be great.
How's Eamon going to jump out the helicopter?
No, Beverly Turner. Beverly Turner, she'd do it. She would nail it.
Bev would be good, yeah.
She would nail it.
Right, good stuff. Still ahead, we asked for your questions and we're about to answer them. It's almost time for Flummox the Five. You're with the Saturday Five live on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we'll bring you more on disturbances during Armistice Day and, more importantly, take time to honour the memory of our fallen heroes. Plus, Charles at 75, a man who had the hardest act to follow in Queen Elizabeth II. My honest verdict on our new king. Plus, SAS hero Phil Campion live in the studio with his memories of serving his country and fighting for British values. Mark Dolan tonight, 9 to 11 on GB News.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Some more juicy emails hot off the press. Cheryl says, just started watching tonight's programme. Ben Leo and Darren Grimes absolutely spot on regarding today's process. Gives me a little bit of hope in the younger generation with sensible broadcasters like these two. Cheryl, thank you. I'm not that young. I know I look about 12, but my true age would surprise you.
I am very young.
Simon says, delighted to hear Belinda is coming on the show next week. How about Bobby Davro the week after? He's hilarious. I completely agree.
He is funny.
Now then, it's time for Flummox to 5, where you wonderful viewers set the agenda. Thanks very much for sending in all your questions. First up, we have this from Linda. She says, my favourite mind-blowing fact is the amount of water on Earth never changes. What is your mind-blowing fact? Benjamin, let's start with you.
Well, it seems rather mediocre compared to that, although arguably that one's obvious, but...
Oh, poor Linda!
Sorry, Lynn. That 3 US presidents were born in 3 consecutive months in 1946.
Who were they?
Clinton, Bush and Trump were born in June, July and August, just after World War II. Quite incredible. Of, 350 million people, and half the living presidents were born weeks apart.
Sorry, who is it? Clinton, Bush...
and Trump.
Ah.
Wow.
Well, only one of those did any good.
So not Trump, I'm guessing.
All right, what's yours?
My mind-blowing fact is, I've just Googled it, so apologies, but did you know that a cloud can weigh up to 1 million tonnes?
Really?
Yeah. Do you want me to read you the... So it says a cloud typically has a volume of around 1,000 kilometres.
You started reading that before we answered.
Yeah.
I think we might have said no.
Did you know that?
Well, no, I didn't know that.
I must admit, this is something I did during the pandemic when I'd lost my mind. I learnt about clouds, so it's really nice you're kind of bringing back those lockdown vibes for me. Cool story, bro.
Apparently it's to do with all the water density and something to do with the atmosphere as well, but...
Did someone tell you that before?
Yeah, no, I learnt it in school. OK. Yeah, loved science.
I think I've got a fun one, actually, or an interesting one, at least. Australia is wider than the moon.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That is good.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Oh, my gosh.
Australia is wider than the moon.
Does that mean the moon... I'm going to sound really dense here. Does that mean the moon wouldn't fit in Australia, would it?
It means that the moon would fit in Australia.
If you flattened it?
Not if you flattened it, but it would fit in Australia width-wise.
Right.
So Australia is wider in terms of width than the moon, just like I'm wider than you.
Then the moon's diameter. Yeah, the diameter of the moon.
Yes.
Yeah. How fabulous. It takes us about a week to get to the moon. And go back to your previous story, what's quite interesting is Boris Johnson and Trump are both, I believe, Tauruses, who, when they said that there was a new star sign, they both became Geminis. Ooh. My interesting fact is about squirrels. They land like superheroes.
You're going to have to do the line.
No, I need to show people. So they land like this, like with a knee bent, but they have their other hand on the floor, and they sort of land like that.
Oh, I see.
But so when you see a superhero in a film landing like that, we shouldn't say...
Ben's face.
We shouldn't say squirrels land like superheroes. We should say superheroes land like squirrels.
Was this another lockdown discovery?
No, this is just me messing around on Instagram.
Long night, hasn't it?
All right, let's move on. Good time. A question from James. I knew we'd get to Benjamin's clothing eventually. Does Benjamin Butterworth need a pay rise? Wearing a chunky knit under a fleece suggests he can't afford to put the heating on.
There's a lot of fuss.
I would say, for viewers at home, this studio is really hot, so I'm not appropriately dressed at all. But do you know what? At home, I'm a real stickler. I do not want to put the heating on. I'll just put layers and layers on or a thicker duvet at night. I can't bear wasting money on heating.
Oh, yeah, but you're all right for all that green crap to come about, though. He wants to make energy bills even higher.
Well, I think I look great. I haven't come as a James Bond villain like Ben, unfortunately.
Well, like I said, it's Christmas. I'm doing my part. I think all we need is some mulled wine and some mince pies.
What's Christmassy about what you're wearing?
Look, I don't dictate when Christmas starts, but I went to a shop yesterday and they were banging out, it was a spa, I think, banging out Christmas carols. And I said to the woman behind the counter, why are you playing Christmas carols? She said, management said either we play Christmas carols or no music at all. So
Ben Leo, what's Christmassy about a turtleneck?
Yeah.
Well, it just looks a bit, I don't know, a bit sophisticated.
Right. Okay. That was a brilliant explanation to a woman and a gay man. Yes. Very sophisticated. Well done.
Well, look, I'm the only straight man here, so maybe it's a different kind of style going on.
Excuse me. My mind-blowing fact is that I'm not even gay. I just do it.
That wouldn't surprise me. Right, next, moving on, a question from Freddie. Oh, Freddie, you keep sending us maths questions. Please stop. Right, it says, what have we got this week, Freddie? But here's another maths question for you. What is -2 times -2?
It's -4, isn't it?
I'll just repeat that for the radio listeners. What is -2 times -2? -2?
I thought it was -4.
Is it 4?
Yeah, because it would make it a positive, wouldn't it?
I think it might be 4.
As opposed to a minus.
Does anyone know the answer in the building?
But it's -2 times -2. Surely that's -4.
I got a G in GCSE maths, so don't look at me for the answer.
I didn't even know you could get a G.
A G for God help him.
let me just summon the maths gods in my ear. The answer is... What's your answer?
4.
Darren?
Well, it's definitely not minus.
-4.
4.
The answer is... 4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, nuts. My dad's watching this.
Freddie, no more maths question, please. Next, a question from Ian. This is a very important one, I think. It says, I've searched everywhere today to try and buy a Karamak. Well, who was the guy who had about 2 weeks' worth, who emailed in earlier? Get in contact with him. I tried to buy a Karamak and have lots of places have sold out of them. Can you help? Well, yeah, look, like I just said, we need to hook Ian up with the guy who emailed earlier, who's stashing them all for himself.
I hope this really tells people that if they like something, they need to buy it. They can't wait until it's at risk of being taken away from them. They have to seize it now.
Do you think this could be an elaborate plan from the owners of Karamak to get everyone talking about Karamak and buying the Karamaks so that they start doing better and then everyone eats Karamaks again?
It could be a
I didn't know what a Karamak was until today. Now I might go and buy one.
But then there's the alternative. What's it called?
The Cadbury's Caramilk.
Caramilk. So what's wrong with the Caramilk?
Oh, no, I don't believe there's anything wrong with it. I believe it's a contender for the Karamak. I believe that Cadbury's, who probably had their internal people spot the Karamak sales were down and they went, right, let's bring in a...
Well, I tell you what, next week we need to do a taste test, don't we? Track one down, get your mates to send us some through.
Karamaks,
and then we'll go from there.
OK, and quick last one. I can't wait to see Nigel on I'm a Celebrity. If he makes it, I think he'll romp it. Who would the Fab Five like to see in the jungles? We've done presenters. Who else would you like to see in the jungle? Darren, Albie, quickly first.
Beyonce.
Darren.
Look, I think Bobby Davro has to go in. He's hilarious.
Oh, that bloke, Tom Cruise.
Oh,
Benjamin.
Yeah.
That bloke.
I think I'll do it.
You?
Oh.
Only because Tom Cruise
for the
is
money.
going.
On that bombshell, thank you to our guests tonight, the brilliant Diane Spencer. Come and see us again very soon, I hope. Next up, it's the brilliant Mark Dolan. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week at the same time. Now, let's get your latest weather. Wrap up, stay warm. It's going to be a cold one.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Those of us that hold on to clear skies overnight do have the chance of seeing the aurora, so keep an eye out. Unfortunately for southern areas of England and Wales, it is going to turn increasingly cloudy as this band of rain pushes its way in. Could be some heavy pulses at times, also quite windy, particularly along coastal areas. The rain, though, feeding in some milder air, so temperatures here holding up a touch more overnight, but where you hold on to the clear skies across northeast England into Scotland, it will be very chilly with some frost. Also, these locations seeing some fog forming, and that will provide for quite a murky start to Sunday morning. Could be quite slow to clear, lasting until the start of the afternoon in some places, but once it does leave its way off, there will be some sunny spells for Scotland and northeast England. Elsewhere, this band of rain pushing its way in, heavy pulses following on behind that as well. Perhaps lighter and patchy for parts of southeast England, but still fairly cloudy throughout a good portion of the day. Temperatures generally between 7 and 13 degrees Celsius, but feeling particularly cold where the fog does linger throughout a good portion of the day. On Monday, our attention turns to this area of low pressure. There is still some uncertainty in regards to how the jet stream is going to help spin this up and develop it, but it does look like it could be a pretty widely unsettled day with this band of heavy rain moving its way through, followed by some blustery showers behind that, a swathe of gales pushing across areas of England and Wales. Quite breezy across northern areas of Scotland as well. The precipitation more showery here, and into the middle part of the week as well, we will hold on to a fairly unsettled theme with sunshine and showers. Bye-bye.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Fed up of being patronised and bored to death by other afternoon news shows? Me too. So I thought, if you want a job done properly, do it yourself. News as it breaks on TV, radio and online. All the big debates and the best guests on the topics that you actually care about. Whether you're having discussions with your mates down the pub, in your van to and from work, or around the dinner table with your family, that's the kind of stuff that this show is all about. Join me, Patrick Christie's, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online. In the United Kingdom and across the world, this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, my tribute to our fallen heroes who have given us more than words can say. They're gone, but not forgotten, and their legacy lives on to this day. My Mark Meets guest is one of the big stars of 90s pop music, who went from selling 6 million albums worldwide to booze and drugs hell. Jimmy Constable from the hugely popular boy band 911 tells his incredible story shortly. Meanwhile, in the big story, we reflect on Remembrance Weekend with British Army veteran Ed McGuinness. Why are these memorials so important? And in my take at 10, Charles at 75, a man who had the hardest act to follow in Queen Elizabeth II. My honest verdict on our new king. So, 2 hours of big opinion, big debate, a bit of entertainment and a massive acknowledgement of our war heroes, which is the big topic of my big opinion in 2 minutes' time. First up, here is Aaron Armstrong with the news headlines.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister has condemned what he's described as violent scenes from far-right groups and Hamas sympathisers after an eventful day of demonstrations in London. Hundreds of thousands of people took part in a pro-Palestinian rally in the capital, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, which coincided with Armistice Day. The vast majority dispersed peacefully around 6 o'clock, but police officers have since detained a breakaway group of around 150 people wearing face coverings and letting off fireworks in Mayfair, with further clashes taking place near Victoria Station. Rishi Sunak says all criminality must be met with the full and swift force of the law. Earlier in central London, police arrested 92 counter-protesters following a number of clashes to prevent a breach of the peace. They included members of the English Defence League and other far-right groups. The Home Secretary has been accused of stoking tensions and emboldening the far-right. She described pro-Palestinian rallies as hate marches. Our Home and Security Editor Mark White sent this report from Westminster.
Well, police have now moved in. They're trying to clear this main road going over Westminster Bridge. We've had protesters from both sides, pro-Palestinian protesters and also these counter-protesters here. They have been clashing sporadically as two groups have come together, but it's been pretty well contained by the Metropolitan Police and these other forces who are here today on mutual aid. But it remains fairly tense, a bit volatile when people from time to time are coming together as they head for the tube station to head home. Lots of police here in Parliament.